My name is Avery Quinn, 30 years old.
The weight of the pumpkin pie steadying my hands should have felt like love, but at my parents' door it felt like ballast. Through the leaded glass, I saw the chandelier throwing constellations across 20-something relatives and the easy choreography of people who always knew where to stand. Dad spotted me and flung the door open like a curtain. There she is, our number cruncher. I smiled the way a mask smiles and stepped into sage and roasted turkey and the soft scrape of silver on porcelain. Mom kissed my cheek, already peering past me toward the driveway. "Oh, dessert! Is that all you brought?" "Just me and the pie," I said, light as foam. "Made from scratch." Dad patted my shoulder. "Avery works with numbers. Very stable, always punctual." It landed like a backhand compliment. Always punctual, always reliable, always the one who holds the stage lights, never the lead. A hush moved through the room with the precision of a dimmer switch. Heads turned toward the entryway. My sister arrived 30 minutes late in a Camel Max Mara coat and a Prada bag that looked like it came with its own spotlight. "Traffic was brutal," she said, not sounding sorry. Mom beamed with pride, reserved for magazine covers. "You look stunning, sweetheart. Is this new?" Marissa preened. "Just picked it up last weekend. The color called to me." A dry swallow scraped down my throat, champagne burning worse than bubbles. Dinner was a layout of choreographed admiration. Across the table, Marissa held court about luxury brands and social media, a story that glittered when turned, like a costume jewel angled to catch the light. Cousin Lauren leaned toward me during a lull. "I've been meaning to ask about my student loans. The interest is killing me. Could I—" "Actually," I said, grateful for utility, "there's a program that—" "Not everyone wants to hear about math at dinner," Mom cut in sweetly. From 3 seats away, her hearing miraculously sharp, "Ask Marissa, she's great with money." The quiet grew heavy as a velvet curtain. Marissa swirled her wine. "Oh, Avery's always crunching numbers," she trilled, "and always short on cash, it seems." Heat crawled up my neck. "I manage my money just fine." "Do you?" She lifted one perfect brow. "Then why are you always asking for loans?" My fork hovered over untouched turkey. "I've never asked you for money, not once." She laughed, bright as breaking glass. "Please, you should stop begging for money. It's embarrassing." The chandelier hummed. 23 pairs of eyes ping-ponged. Dad lunged for an off-ramp. "So, Seahawks game last Sunday?" Laughter stuttered. Conversation lurched forward, leaving my humiliation discarded like roadkill, and I sat there, 10 years old again, emptying a piggy bank for her dance costume because your sister needs it more. Practical one, reliable one, the one expected to sacrifice. I excused myself when dessert arrived and locked the powder room door with a click that sounded like a safe engaging. My hands trembled, but my mind sharpened into lines and columns. I opened my banking app. 5 recurring payments to accounts with Marissa's name, car insurance, 3 credit cards, a personal loan that was always until her commission lands. The total glowed at the bottom like a warning beacon. $52,800. 5 years. An average of $880 a month. I canceled the first payment. Confirmation buzz. Canceled the second. Buzz. Third. Buzz. Fourth. Buzz. Fifth. Buzz. The sound, beep, dull and exact, etched itself behind my ribs. A noise I used to fear became, suddenly, a signal for air. I splashed water on my face and stared into the mirror at someone who looked the same and was not. I went back to the table and slid into my chair. "We started without you," Mom said. "That's fine," I said. My phone vibrated, a little chorus of confirmations. "More coffee?" Dad asked. "Yes," I said, watching the pot tilt, watching hot, dark clarity surge into the cup. "I'll have a second helping." Morning streamed through my blinds like a different kind of permission. At my small desk between kitchen and living room, I opened a new spreadsheet, columns breathing open like lungs. Payment history, Marissa. Date, vendor, account, amount, reason given. The work slid through my fingers with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I saved the file in 3 places, then saved the PDFs. Backups of backups. I watched the sum settle again. 52,800. The number did not accuse me of generosity. It accused me of complicity. My phone lit with messages. Payment failed? Did you change banks? Call me now. Auto pay declined. Fix this. Credit card company called. Insufficient funds? Avery, what did you do? The punctuation multiplied like someone running out of air. Then Mom, what's going on? Marissa says you're refusing to help. My voice surprised me. Level. I've been paying her bills for 5 years. She told everyone I beg her for money. I stopped. That's not what she meant, Mom soothed. Family helps family. I helped for 5 years, I said. That's $52,800. Silence stretched. Dad came on the line, older in one heartbeat. You've changed, he said, because it was easier than admitting they hadn't. I haven't, I said. I stopped letting people use my kindness as their safety net. After we hung up, I braced for the smear and didn't have to wait. A family group chat pinged. Please keep Avery in your prayers during this difficult time. Mental health struggles can look like jealousy. Hearts and folded hands stacked under the post. A cascade of performative compassion. I counted the popcorn bumps on the ceiling to keep from hurling my phone. I went to work and did something mundane and miraculous. I worked. My manager glanced up during our check-in. You seem focused. I am, I said. In my pocket, a bank alert chimed and didn't feel like danger. That evening, I clicked purchase on a solid oak desk I'd bookmarked for months. As I typed in my card number, there were no mental gymnastics, no cross-checking against an invisible ledger of her needs. The purchase went through with an ordinary ding that sounded absurdly like sunlight. 3 days later, she materialized in the lobby of my office tower, designer sunglasses perched like armor. Her hair was styled into the strategic dishevelment. Her sweater said effortless wealth. Her face said curated distress. How could you abandon me like this? She cried the second I stepped through the turnstile, tears tracking perfectly without smudging mascara. Heads turned, the security guard's hand hovered near a radio. After everything I've done for you. I kept my voice low enough to make her raise hers. This isn't the place. Financial problems? She laughed, brittle as a snapped comb. You're the one who's always needed my help, and now when I need you, temporarily, you cut me off? The marble floor echoed each syllable. The air conditioning roared like distant surf. Somewhere an elevator chimed. A passing colleague pretended not to listen. Call me, I said quietly, when you're ready to discuss a repayment plan. The word hung between us like a grenade with the pin removed. Repayment. Her tears vanished mid-drop. The look that replaced them was clean math. What lever works now that pity failed? This isn't over, she whispered through her teeth. A promise or a threat or both. She pivoted on stiletto heels, the click-click a metronome of retreat. I stood in the cool lobby and felt the strangest thing. Not triumph, not fire, space. A widening in the chest where panic used to live. I exhaled. The buzz of my phone startled me and then didn't. A bank alert. Only my rent clearing. Ordinary and on time. The sound sealed into memory like a new ringtone for freedom. Outside, late afternoon bled gold along the edges of the glass building. I caught my reflection. Same coat, same posture, and nearly didn't recognize the posture inside it. Numbers don't lie. People do. The thought arrived not as a dagger, but as a key. Up on the 32nd floor, my new desk would arrive in a few days, solid enough to anchor paperwork that belonged to me. In 3 different clouds, the spreadsheet slept like proof against amnesia. I pushed through the doors into air that smelled faintly of rain and hot asphalt and something else, something like possibility. The fight ahead was going to be about truth, not money. And for once, I didn't feel small. I felt exact. This isn't over, she'd said. Good, I thought. Then we can finally finish it. Lauren showed up at my apartment 2 days later, holding takeout from the deli we used to visit after high school. The smell of dill and rye filled the room before she even spoke. You okay? She asked, setting down the sandwiches. Everyone's talking. I poured iced tea into mismatched glasses. Which version? The one where you apparently lost your mind and cut Marissa off in a jealous rage, she said, half smiling. But Michael called me last night. He thinks there's more to it. There's always more, I said. We sat at my tiny table, the hum of the fridge marking silence. "How much was it?" she asked softly. 52,800. The number still tasted metallic.
Lauren froze mid-bite. Holy Avery, that's...
5 years, I interrupted. Every month, rent money, groceries, debt payments. She said it was temporary until her commission came in.
Lauren shook her head.
She's been lying to everyone, hasn't she?
Lying's a habit when truth costs too much.
Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Cousins made a group chat. They called it Team Avery.
I blinked. You're kidding.
Nope. They kicked Marissa out after she posted that pray for your mentally unstable sister thing. The absurdity almost made me laugh. Guess truth travels faster than pity when there's screenshots. A knock interrupted us. 3 firm taps. My stomach tightened.
Lauren peered through the peephole. It's Evan, she whispered, surprised.
Marissa's husband. The calm one, the polite shadow at every party. I hadn't expected him to come here. I opened the door slowly. He looked exhausted, his tie crooked, eyes rimmed red. "Avery, can we talk?"
Lauren stepped aside. He rubbed his temples.
I had no idea about any of this. The debt, the payments, the facade. His voice broke slightly on the last word. She told me her mother left her a trust fund. That's where the extra money came from.
Something in my chest shifted, a sympathy I didn't want.
She's been drowning us, he continued. I only found out when the bank called this morning. We're behind on everything.
Lauren folded her arms. You mean Avery's been covering your bills too?
No, just hers. His guilt was palpable. But it means the rest of us were living on sand. I handed him a glass of water. You should talk to her about rehab, financial or otherwise.
I'm done talking, he said quietly.
I'm fixing it. But I needed to thank you for helping her as long as you did.
After he left, Lauren whispered,
Did that sound like he's going to explode or file for divorce?
Maybe both.
That night, I couldn't sleep. The spreadsheet glowed on my laptop, each row an echo of some late-night call. Please, just until next month. You're the only one I can count on. I stared until the lines blurred. Then, at 11:42 p.m., a knock thundered at the door. My stomach sank before I even moved. She stood there, Marissa, makeup gone, hair unbrushed, a plain t-shirt instead of couture. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she might fall apart if she let go. It's nearly midnight, I said. Please, she whispered, eyes shiny. I didn't know where else to go. Old reflexes rose up, to comfort, to rescue, but I stayed still. Then I stepped aside. Come in. She moved like a ghost through the small apartment, pacing. They keep calling, she said, voice breaking. Credit cards, collectors, and the BMW. They're taking it next week. I poured her water. She eyed it like it might turn to wine if she stared long enough. Mom and Dad are heartbroken, she continued. You're tearing the family apart. I took a slow breath. I'm not the one who lied to them. If I lose everything, it's on you, she snapped suddenly. Is that what you want? To see me fail? I waited. Silence is the best mirror. Eventually, she deflated into a chair. I've helped you for 5 years, I said. She nodded quickly, seizing the opening. And I'm so grateful. That's why I don't understand why you'd stop now. That's 52,800. Her words tripped. You're exaggerating. Without speaking, I opened the laptop. The screen bathed the room in blue light. Column after column. Dates, amounts, account numbers. Notes of every promise and plea. Her mouth moved soundlessly. You kept records? I'm an auditor, I said. It's what I do. That's cruel. No, I said softly. It's clarity. She tried another tactic, voice rising. You make more than me. You can afford it. You don't understand what it's like to struggle. I make $185,000 a year, I said evenly. I live in this one-bedroom apartment so I could afford your bills. Her lips parted, words stalling. It was the first honest silence between us in years. But we're sisters, she finally whispered. Family helps family. I stood and opened the door. You had 5 years. That's enough. She gathered her purse with trembling hands. You'll regret this, she said, eyes narrow. No, I said. You should regret confusing compassion with obligation. The door clicked shut. An hour later, my phone lit with Mom. I answered out of reflex. Marissa says you refuse to help, she began. She's going through so much. Did she tell you how much I've already helped? She mentioned small loans. $52,000, I said. The line went silent. Then Dad's voice replaced hers. That can't be right. I can email you the documentation, I said, cursor already hovering over the draft email titled Evidence. Why keep giving her money all this time, he asked, bewildered.
Because you taught me that family helps family, no matter what. He didn't have an answer. After I hung up, texts cascaded like rain.
Uncle Warren. Your sister is devastated. Aunt Patricia. The family forgives. Be the bigger person. Lauren. Everyone knows now. We're with you.
Then one from an unfamiliar number. Evan. Thank you for your past support. We're sorting everything. Please come to a family meeting Sunday. I stared at it. My reflection ghosted across the screen, dark circles under my eyes, the faintest twitch of a smirk. A meeting, like we were a company, not a family. I typed back, I'll be there. Outside, the city was quiet except for the low hum of traffic. My apartment smelled faintly of coffee and cold rain, of paper and resolve. I sat at the new desk, still smelling of oak and varnish. On the monitor, the spreadsheet blinked, a clean grid of boundaries at last. When I finally closed the laptop, the dark room reflected my face and, faintly, the skyline behind it. For the first time in years, the silence didn't sound like absence. It sounded like rest. In that stillness, I realized something startling. The real debt wasn't the $5,800. It was all the years I spent believing that love required payment. Sunday would test whether they could love me without the receipts. And for the first time, I was ready to find out. The house looked smaller than I remembered, not the grand Pacific Palisades showcase I'd grown up envying, but a shrunken, echoing space with drawn blinds and silence thick enough to feel. Evan opened the door before I could knock. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice calm, but iron underneath. This won't be easy. The living room had been arranged like a courtroom. Father and mother perched side by side on the love seat, both tense. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Warren filled one end of the sofa. Even grandmother was here, her presence alone meaning this wasn't just another family drama. There was an empty chair in the center, positioned like a defendant's seat. I took the far corner of the sofa, the only spot that felt neutral ground.
Mother forced a brittle smile. This is unnecessary. Family disagreements should stay private.
Not this one, Evan said, setting a thick manila folder on the coffee table. Not anymore. A door shut down the hall. Marissa appeared, eyes rimmed red but dry, wearing jeans and a beige sweater. It looked strange on her, like humility borrowed for the day. She sat stiffly. Evan didn't look at her. I've asked everyone here so we can finally face what's been happening. He opened the folder. Over the last several years, Marissa has accumulated debt totaling $96,500. A collective intake of breath filled the room. That includes $52,800 paid by Avery, he continued. Money Marissa told me came from a trust fund left by grandmother. I never created any trust, grandmother said sharply. The edge in her voice could have cut glass.
Evan laid out the papers. Credit statements, bank transfers, receipts. The pages fanned across the coffee table like white wings of accusation. Designer stores, luxury travel, car leases, credit card minimums. This, he said quietly, is the truth we've all been avoiding.
Father leaned forward, scanning the numbers as if trying to reconcile a world gone off balance. This doesn't sound like our daughter. Marissa's composure cracked. I needed those things. Everyone expected me to be successful. By lying, Aunt Patricia's voice sliced through. By stealing from your sister? Marissa's face contorted. I was going to pay her back. When? Evan asked, turning a page. You haven't held a steady job in 3 years. What money were you planning to use? Sick. Silence hit like a verdict. Mother reached out, voice trembling. Sweetheart, is this true? It was the first time I'd ever heard her ask my sister for proof of anything. Marissa's eyes brimmed. I just wanted everyone to be proud of me.
You lied to everyone, I said quietly. You didn't need their pride. You needed control.
She flinched like I'd struck her.
Evan straightened. Starting today, that control ends. The Range Rover is being sold. The Maldives trip is canceled. Marissa starts full-time at Belinda's boutique on Monday. We begin financial counseling Thursday.
Mother's face went white. That's extreme.
It's necessary, Evan replied. For a long moment, no one spoke. Father's gaze slid toward me. Ashamed, uncertain, old. We should have seen it sooner, he said finally. His voice broke on the word sorry.
It wasn't the triumphant moment I'd imagined. Just quiet acknowledgement that damage existed. I nodded once, accepting without fanfare. Marissa stared at the floor. So I'm the villain now? Evan sighed. You're my wife, but this ends today. The old hierarchy, Her brilliance, my reliability, shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly, like tectonic plates easing apart. Grandmother rose with surprising steadiness. "You'll all stay for tea," she said. It wasn't a question. If we've aired the truth, we can at least sit with it. While she shuffled to the kitchen, no one moved. The ticking clock sounded like a metronome marking the death of illusion. Mother finally spoke, softer than I'd ever heard her. "Avery, you kept records of all this?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I knew one day I'd need to remember the difference between love and obligation." She blinked, and for a heartbeat, she looked older, not polished or perfect, just human. I caught Father staring at one of the statements, his jaw tightening. Later, I'd realize he was looking at a line bearing his own signature. He had co-signed one of Marissa's early loans years ago, and maybe that guilt explained his silence all these years. "I'm sorry," he said again, almost inaudible, "for making you responsible for what we didn't want to see." "I know," I said, "and I forgive you, but I'm not stepping back into that role." He nodded, the nod of a man realizing his daughter had grown taller than the space he'd built for her. After the meeting, we sat stiffly around the table with tea none of us tasted. Marissa's eyes were swollen. Mother dabbed hers. Evan's hand shook slightly when he reached for his cup. The papers remained between us, mute witnesses that no one could dismiss. When I stood to leave, Evan walked me to the door. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying, for not gloating." "I didn't want justice," I told him. "Just truth." He smiled faintly. Sometimes they're the same thing. Outside, the afternoon light burned soft gold across the lawn. I could almost smell relief in the air, bitter, like medicine that finally starts to work. That night, as I made tea in my apartment, my phone buzzed. A bank notification. Deposit, $600. Memo, first payment. A text followed. "It'll take years, but I'll pay you back. M." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed 2 words. Received. Thank you. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a door cracked open in the wall I'd built. Over the next months, things shifted quietly. Evan sold the Range Rover and replaced it with a sensible used sedan. Marissa worked at the boutique. Photos surfaced of her folding clothes, smiling without pretense. Father began calling weekly, not to scold, but to ask how I was. Mom sounded uncertain now, careful with her words. "Your sister's learning," she said once. "Maybe we all are." Spring came, and the city softened. I moved my desk near the window, where the afternoon sun pooled over the oak grain like honey. The spreadsheet still sat on my desktop, but I opened it less often. The numbers were no longer wounds. They were evidence of boundaries that held. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I'd think of that day in the living room, the folder opening, the truth unfurling like smoke, and realize the real gift wasn't repayment or apology. It was finally being seen. A year later, Thanksgiving arrived without fanfare. No crystal chandelier, no crowded dining room, just the scent of rosemary and lemon drifting through Evan and Marissa's downsized Tudor-style house, modest and warm. I stood on the porch balancing a homemade apple tart in both hands. The wood beneath my feet creaked like it remembered heavier days. Through the glass panels, I saw laughter flicker across simpler faces. The scene was smaller, 8 people instead of 24. But quieter didn't mean emptier. My heart hesitated in my chest. For a moment, I almost turned back to my car, ready to spend the holiday alone again. But then Dad spotted me through the window and smiled, soft, not booming, not forced. He opened the door before I could knock. "There she is," he said, voice gentler than I remembered. "Happy Thanksgiving." "Happy Thanksgiving, Dad." He stepped aside and warmth wrapped around me. Mom appeared, her expression tender but unsure, as though testing a language she hadn't spoken in years. "You're right on time. Marissa's just about to serve." She kissed my cheek, and this time it wasn't perfunctory. The dining table was smaller too. White plates, folded cloth napkins, a single candle at the center. No glitter, no crystal, no crowd. Just family. Marissa emerged from the kitchen, carrying a platter of sliced turkey. No designer labels, no dramatic entrances. Just steady hands and a simple cream sweater. "Everything looks wonderful," I said, meaning it. She met my eyes and smiled faintly. "Thanks for coming." Her voice had changed, softer, stripped of the edge that used to carve me down. We sat. Evan poured water instead of wine. The only sound was the scrape of chairs and the low hum of the oven fan. When everyone was seated, Evan lifted his glass. "A toast," he said, but then he nodded toward Marissa.
She rose slowly, her fingers trembling just enough to make the glass shimmer. To a family who tells the truth, even when it hurts. The words hung there, fragile and pure. I felt my throat tighten. I lifted my glass, not quite smiling, but not resisting either. To truth, I whispered. Dinner was quiet but real. Lauren talked about her promotion, and Dad actually listened. Mom admitted she'd joined a budgeting course online. Even Grandmother laughed about the trust fund myth she'd supposedly created. No one competed, no one performed. Halfway through the meal, I caught Marissa watching me with something that might have been gratitude, or maybe guilt's gentler twin, humility. Later, when dishes were done and coats retrieved, she stopped me by the door. I sent another payment this morning, she said quietly. Same as always. I know, I replied. I saw the alert. I'll keep sending them. I don't expect you to forgive me yet. I nodded once. Forgiveness isn't a bill to pay. It's a balance to rebuild. She exhaled shakily. I'll remember that. Outside, the air smelled of rain and cinnamon. Dad followed me to the driveway, hands shoved in his coat pockets. You know, he said, I found an old statement last month. One of her loans. I co-signed it. That's why I never pushed her. I thought if I ignored it, it might vanish. Guilt doesn't disappear, I said gently. It just compounds interest. He chuckled ruefully. You get that from me, you know. The metaphors. Then quieter. I'm proud of you, Avery. I just never said it before. It took me a second to find words. Thank you. He nodded and turned toward the house. I sat in my car for a long moment before starting the engine, staring at the faint reflection of my face in the windshield. For years, that reflection had been someone practical, reliable, invisible. Tonight it looked like someone whole. Back in my apartments, the place felt different. Larger somehow, not in square footage, but in peace. The new burgundy sectional glowed under lamplight. The oak desk stood by the window where sunlight would reach it in the morning. On the screen of my laptop, a spreadsheet blinked open. 12 payments from Marissa, each perfectly on time. I scrolled through the old notes. Desperate messages, promises, apologies, and hovered over delete. My finger hesitated, then pressed. The screen cleared. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was release. I opened my journal, the same one I'd filled with numbers, dates, and rants in the darker months. On a new page, I wrote, $5,200 repaid, piece by piece. Debt settled, lessons, still accruing interest. If she were a stranger, I'd have stopped years ago, but she was my sister. I paused, then wrote one more line. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. Outside, the city lights flickered like cautious hope. My phone buzzed. A new notification. Deposit confirmed. The 13th payment, lucky number maybe. SS. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. The war was over. Not won, not lost, just over. People talk about forgiveness like it's a finish line. It isn't. It's maintenance. Monthly, steady, imperfect. Like rebuilding credit after bankruptcy. In the quiet, I realized the spreadsheet was never really about money. It was a map of everything I'd given away trying to prove I was good enough to keep. I closed the journal and looked around my apartment. The lamp's glow, the stack of unread books, the framed photo of my parents laughing for real at last year's barbecue. Life had grown honest. Smaller, yes, but truer. Sometimes I still hear that old phrase in my head, family helps family. I think of it differently now. Family helps family grow up. And as I turned off the light, a question rose, the same one that ends every story, though few ever say it out loud. If it had been you, how long would you have kept paying? Where does generosity end and self-respect begin? And if love demands a receipt, was it ever love at all? The night didn't answer. It didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, the numbers balanced. And peace, quiet, measured, earned, was finally in the black.